Hi everybody, I hope you're all healthy and safe. My name is Catteeuw, physical coach of Royal Antwerp FC. I'm very pleased to do this webinar for ball performance, and today I would like to show you how we do the monitoring of the fitness status of our players. For those who are less familiar with the Belgian football competition, just a short introduction on Royal Antwerp FC. It's the oldest football club in Belgium, founded in 1880, with its biggest success in '93 with a European Cup final in the Wembley Stadium against Parma, which we unfortunately lost. After that, it went a little bit down with the club. In 2004, the club relegated to the second division, and it's only in 2017 the club promoted again to the first division. This year, we ended the competition at the fourth place with just one game to play in the regular season before the stop due to the coronavirus. We were in fourth position and we reached the final of the cup. Hopefully we can play this game later on in the beginning of August. For myself, I did my PhD at Leuven University, after which I was for 1 year research and development manager at Top Sports Lab. After that, I was for 6 years physical coach at KRC Genk, and since the promotion to the first division, I came to Antwerp as a physical coach. So today I would like to show you how we gather all our data on the players, how we manage all this data and try to get to a decision, final decision for the staff. First, I will show you the framework. Afterwards, I will show you some examples of the daily monitoring and the weekly monitoring. To start with the framework, I would like to show you first the model of Meeuwissen on the causation of the sports injuries, a model you all know, and also the adaptations by Barr. But I would like to focus more on the combination of the model of Meeuwissen with the Bannister performance model. Here you see on the right side. So in our testing, we like to grasp as many internal risk factors as possible, and then we try to monitor as much as possible the workload, so we can define fatigue components, fitness components, which go back, of course, then to the modifiable factors or the intrinsic risk factors, so we can have the best look on the status of the players, the best look as possible, to prevent, of course, injuries and to try to get the best performances out of the athletes. Another important aspect before we come to the framework is the communication, and more importantly, the communication quality between the medical team and the head coach, the medical team and the physiotherapist, fitness coaches, and the board, for example. Let's focus on the first table. In the columns, you see the communication quality ranked from low over moderate to high quality. For 4 outcomes in the rows, the injury burden, the incidence of severe injuries, training attendance, and match availability. Like in the injury burden, you can clearly see here with a high communication quality, the injury burden is lower than in case of the low communication quality. Same for the severe injuries, which means an unavailability for over 28 days. You see this incidence is lower, 0.9 for high communication quality compared to the 1.7 with the low communication quality. And this tends to go on also for the other outcomes and for the other tables as well. So very important communication quality between all parts of medical staff, technical staff, and the club. So we come to the framework now. The framework stolen a little bit from our French colleagues at Paris Saint-Germain. They use this framework for monitoring training status of the players. It starts with the data capturing, with, for instance, GPS, data storage, data transformation, data analysis, data visualization in dashboards, and so on, onto the staff decision. But I'll make it a little bit more with our own framework, adapted framework. To start with the data capturing, two main aspects in our data capturing. One is testing, which is for us, testing is 2 or 3 times in a year when you do a larger test battery on your players. Monitoring is a daily, weekly, bi-weekly follow-up of your players. All this data will go into a data management system, which is for us the Smartabase athlete management system. First of all data is stored in the system, but it's stored almost all automatically. For instance, when the players use Norboard, this data from the Norboard goes via an API immediately into our athlete management system. Also data which the players have to fill in themselves on their smartphones will go automatically into the system. GPS data goes automatically in the system after every training session. All this data will be transformed in what we call event pages. In these event pages, all the data is nicely set up. Some additional variables are calculated. We can do some deeper calculations with the data, and then it goes into data analysis, where you can compare the data with your benchmarks, with thresholds, where you can do some more statistical analysis and so on. The data is then shown in different dashboards. So dashboards we make, first of all, for ourselves to have a good picture of every athlete, but also dashboards who have to visualize all the different data sets to the different coaches, as well as in the youth academy as for the first team. And eventually we have a very nice dashboard for the coaches to decide on which player can train, cannot train, which player is selectable for a game or not. First, data capturing. So two main aspects. First of all, testing. Like I told you, 2-3 times in a season, the players have to do a larger test battery with tests on treadmill, for instance, speed tests, mobility tests, and so on and so on. Second part is the monitoring, which goes on daily or weekly. Show you here some of the devices. So like the GPS is worn every day by the players for every training session. Norboard, force frame, force decks. This we do weekly. I'll show you later on, but this is weekly. All this data goes immediately into the athlete management system. Hydration, body composition, 2-3 times in a week. The medical staff, they do a check of every player every day, of course. Everything about injuries is noted. Every massage, every treatment, everything is written down in the athlete management system. Of course, also everything the coaching staff remarks on players is captured into the system. And also all the data players can give you, for instance, about their wellness, RPE scores, and so on, is all captured and saved in the athlete management system. So after the data capturing, it goes into the athlete management system. So the data management, like we showed data storage, transformation, data analysis, and visualization. Here I show you an example. So on the left side, you see a player doing the Nordic hamstring exercise on the Nordboard. Underneath the video, you see screens from the iPad with the data during this Nordic hamstring exercise. This data will go immediately into the Smartabase system, so it pulls through automatically into a event form. This data goes into the data transformation, which makes many more calculations on the data of the player. This data goes into a dashboard where you can see the data appearing with a color coding. So the green color means it's okay. Of course, red needs some improvement and is maybe in a dangerous zone for different tests depending on the test. Another example here for the data, the players fill in themselves on their smartphones. For instance, the wellness questionnaire. Players answer the question on the smartphone. Data pulls through automatically to the system. This data will be transformed into bigger spreadsheets where we can add, of course, again, the color coding. From this data, you make some analysis, you make graphs, you make different dashboards where you can maybe flag players, where you can show warnings and so on different data the players fill into the questionnaire. So after this data management part, we like to come to a fitness status for every player. So on top, on the right side, you see the data of the medical staff on injuries, on treatments, data of the different devices. This comes together in, of course, the monitoring part with a traffic light, green, orange, red. The same for the testing. So we bring together the data of the testing and the monitoring into one fitness status for every player. This is a more extended traffic light with 6 colors from unavailable to available. For us, a player is unavailable when he's not at a club. For instance, after a head collision, the player has a concussion and has to stay at home for a couple of days to rest and to lay still. So he's unavailable, he's not at the club. Second phase, which is sometimes the first phase, also is the indoor rehab, when the player is in the club, but he's treated, let's say, on the table with the physiotherapist. Next phase, outdoor rehab. The player is treated still with a physiotherapist and goes outside with a physiotherapist or the strength and conditioning coach to do specific work on the pitch with regards to his injury. Next phase is the modified phase. In this phase, the player is still with the medical staff, but he can do some parts of the football training. This can be, for instance, a warm-up or a passing drill, but just a small specific part of the training session, and then he goes out of the training session again to work with a physiotherapist or with a SNC coach. The green phase is available, still treating or available. So after the part with the physiotherapist, with the medical staff, he comes back into training. He can do the entire training. He's selectable again for games, so he's available. This phase available still treating can go on for quite a long time in some cases, but he's fully in training sessions and games. We'll give you now some examples of the daily monitoring. In the daily monitoring, we use the heart rate monitoring of the Catapult Vector GPS for the internal training load as well as the wellness questionnaire on the smartphones of the players. And of course, the GPS is used as the external training load monitoring. We bring this monitoring, of course, together with the testing data we have from the testing batteries. So we have quite a good idea of the internal risk factors. And with the training monitoring, of course, we try to grasp the fitness effect and the fatigue effect to avoid as many injuries as possible and to get the players to perform at their best. An example here, I have two players here. It's one fullback and one winger with similar results on the treadmill tests, like you can see here on for their VO2 max 58, 57. The speed thresholds are approximately at the same level. But if then you see their data on a training session, you see, for instance, for the red player in his drills, he shows less recovery during the drills if you compare it to the orange player. So we can always go back from the monitoring to the testing and vice versa. Below you see data of the GPS, and also there you can compare, of course, the player in relation to his position and to his test data. Another example here is from the monitoring with the acute chronic ratio. Here you have a acute chronic ratio of a player in the first graph for the total distance, second graph the high speed distance, and the graph below is for the training loads. With a red asterisk, I showed you the data where the player was injured. The first injury was a hyperextension for his right knee, where it was 3 days unavailable. So 3 days no training, 3 days indoor rehab before he could come out and then into a modified phase and then into a full availability again. And then later on, after the first game, because you can see the orange bars starting beginning of August, so it's the beginning of the season after the first game. Again, he had a minor injury, tendinous Achilles tendon right side. He was not unavailable, but for 10 days he had to be in a modified training stage. But still, we could get this player going on into the games, as you see on the orange graphs, but with an adapted program. That's why, for instance, you see after the second injury, the high speed distance was very low compared to the training days before and after this period. Some examples for the weekly monitoring now. The weekly monitoring we always plan to do in the second day after a game. So in our weekly plan, if you play from, let's say, from Sunday to Sunday or Saturday to Saturday, we tend to give a day off the day after a game, and the second day when the players come in, first thing they have to do is to go into the fitness room, do a little warm up on the bike, and then they get tested on Nordboard, force frame, force decks, and a medical checkup, of course. Some examples. So for the Nordboard, force decks and force frame, you see the small videos, and next to the videos you see the visuals of the equipment themselves, and on the right side you see the visualizations, the dashboards we make from this data with the color coding according to our benchmarks and our thresholds. I want to pick one thing out of this about the hamstring strain injuries. We all know hamstring injuries are a major problem in professional football. A lot of hamstring injuries happen during a season. And we try to avoid them as much as possible, but it's of course a very complex problem. It's an interaction between multiple internal and external risk factors and events. It's very difficult to control, but the things we can control, we can test with the tests. For instance, also you see in the Timmins paper, uh, they showed that eccentric hamstring strength lower than 337 Newton had a 4 times more risk for a hamstring strain injury. And the same with the Bishop's femoris long head fascicle length. If it's smaller than 10.5 centimeters, the risk was 4 times higher. Eccentric hamstring strength we can measure with the NORBOARD, so we try to measure this as much as possible, and we love to do it every week if it's possible. Of course, when you have a heavy schedule with European games or with cup games, it's sometimes very difficult. I would like to show you a case for a new player. He arrived just before the start of the new season, and just before this first game, we tested him on the NORBOARD. Like you see here on the left side, on the 31st of July, he was tested. Small difference between left and right. Left are the blue bars, right the orange bars. But the absolute values were pretty low, below 300. So this was a risk. Second game, before the second game, 7th of August, okay, the absolute values were a little bit higher. No problem for the imbalance between left and right. Same for the third game. But towards the fourth game, there was a big difference between left and right. So the left leg was much lower than the right leg, and he had to stop the NORBOARD testing after 2 repetitions. A game later, after 1 repetition, he had to stop, and the difference was already over 40%. So in our eyes, very high risk for hamstring strain injury. Here you see the graph of the last testing with the 1 repetition. You see the big difference, the huge difference between left and right. So left again blue, right orange. But we managed this player's program very well, I think. He played almost all season, every game 90 minutes. But of course, with this problem on the left side for his hamstrings, we tested him almost every week. And in the beginning, you can see in the graph the difference between the left, the blue line and the orange line for the right side. You see there's quite a big gap in the beginning. After a while, around let's say New Year 2019, the lines came closer to one another and they came into the green zone. So the absolute values are now around 400 Newton, and the difference imbalance between left and right has disappeared. So it's fine now. But of course, we made him a special program. If you see the data in the beginning, low absolute values, very high imbalance, and now everything is in green. In the 2 years, this player is now at the club. He had some injuries. You can see it on the left graph, but luckily some minor issues. 1 in the hip, in the back, 2 at the knee, left knee, 1 in the calf. But luckily, no injuries in the hamstrings. But you see on the right graph that the physiotherapist had quite some attention for his hamstrings. This is what we call general maintenance. It's all the work physiotherapists do to prevent the injuries or to treat the regions, the weaker regions, the problem regions of every player. Work with the osteopath, if necessary, massage therapy or adapted strength and conditioning programs. So in this case, we were very happy we could deal with this player in a way that he could do every training session, he could play every game, but sometimes it works the other way. For instance, in this example, a player coming back from an ACL rupture at the right knee, tested 6 months post-operation on the Nordic hamstring exercise on the Nordboard. You see the huge difference between left and right, which made us decide to prolong his rehabilitation until the difference was gone between left and right. So he had 2 more months of adapted training to build up the force in the hamstring muscles of the right leg to prevent re-injury, of course. These are some examples of how we deal with our data to make it possible for the technical staff to make an informed decision upon our data management. So again, one more time, the framework from data capturing until the staff decisions. And so in the end, after the whole data management process, we deliver this sheet to the technical staff with all the players with the respective color. So the green color means player is available for training, and like you see in the background here in this case, there's one player, top left corner, who is in red, who's in indoor rehab, one orange player who is in the modified state, and all the other players are in green, which means available, lighter green, available, but still treating, so they get some treatment from earlier injuries or problems. But the technical staff can see immediately who is available. They can also see some data on the Nordic exercise, some data for the adductors, abductors, workload data, and so on. They have a very quick view on every player. So I hope this was all very clear for you guys, how we work at Royal Antwerp FC. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any, I'm always available. You can always email me and I'll try to answer your questions. Thank you for your attention. All the best. Bye.